Well, thank you for joining the Leadership with Heart podcast. I'm excited to have you today. So, as a caring leader who has decided to create a culture team, it can feel daunting to know where to start. Creating an organizational culture team involves careful planning and thoughtful selection of team members. In this podcast episode, I'm going to walk through some of the steps that you can take to create an effective culture team and share with you some of my experience with culture teams and how it really has impacted the culture. So, I'm Heather Younger, of course, you already know that. And you know my books, The Art of Active Listening, The Art of Caring Leadership. And if you don't, go pick up your copies. I also am the founder and CEO of Employee Fanatics, a consulting firm that really focuses on employee engagement and leadership development. So when we think about culture teams, this is the work that we do all day, every day with Employee Fanatics and worked with organizations from all types of industries to help them create teams that create buy-in. So the first thing you want to do when you create a culture team is define the goals that you have in a team. Start by clearly defining the purpose and goals of your organizational culture team. Determine what you want the team to achieve and how it will contribute to your company's culture. Ensure that these goals align with the overall mission and values of the organization. And make sure that your common goals may be something like improving workplace morale or enhancing diversity and inclusion or promoting company core values. You never know what the goals are, but you want to make sure you have them if you want to be successful in this culture team and make sure that it's sustainable. The second thing you want to focus on is selecting team members. People often ask me, how do I know who to bring in? How do I get them to want to come? How do I get them to want to stay? Well, choose team members who are passionate about the organization's culture and are committed to making a positive impact. Look for individuals from various departments and levels within the organization to ensure a diverse and representative team. Consider factors like experience, communication skills, and enthusiasm for the culture related initiatives. It's also essential to have a mix of senior and junior employees. Determine how new members will be invited to join and when the others will exit the team. I know I worked with one organization, the ones who actually made me see the benefit of the culture teams. And they had kind of an application process where senior leaders and different director and mid-level managers would nominate people. And then they would go through a selection process. There might even be an interview. And then they would bring them onto the team to make sure that there was a good mix of people in there and to make sure their hearts were really in the right place. The third step to doing this is to create a team charter. This is super important. You got to know what your North Star is. You got to know what you're here for. And that's no different when we think about a team of people that you call a culture team and you name them or brand them, whatever you want to. But that's the thing that you want to keep in mind is that the charter has to be clear. Develop that charter that really outlines the purpose, the objectives, the roles, the responsibilities, and the operating guidelines. This charter should serve as like a reference point for team members and help establish expectations for the contributions. I said the word branding earlier. Each company I've worked with on the team, we branded it to get people excited. And also, whenever we would report back to all the other employees about what was happening in the organization, we would use that branded name. And then they know, oh, that's that team that's working on our behalf to make our culture better. It just gets everybody excited. You could even get some swag, some different things that have the branded kind of logo on it, or coffee cups, or squishy animals, whatever you want to do that gets people excited. But that charter is just the beginning of all of it. What is their purpose? What are the guidelines for how they operate their meetings? What are the ground rules for and the guardrails for what they can and cannot say inside those meetings and how they should talk to each other with respect in those meetings? You have to have all that outlined in the team charter. The next thing to be thinking about is setting a regular meeting schedule. Define a regular meeting schedule for the culture team to discuss and plan initiatives. Like this schedule should be convenient for all team members and provide enough time to work on culture related projects. Meetings can be held weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly, depending on the scope of the team's responsibilities. So if you're doing like I talk about often, or I work with some of my clients in the employee engagement and the surveys and the listening sessions. There's a lot of activity going around, culture-related activity, new recognition programs in place, new compensation programs in place, and you need to make sure that the culture team helps with disseminating, communicating, acting as a brand ambassador. Then you might want to meet more frequently during those times of big change and less frequently when the change isn't as like in your face. And one of the last things I would say you want to do when you're trying to create the culture team is provide resources and support. Ensure that the culture team has necessary resources and access to information to carry out their responsibilities effectively. This may include access to budget, training, communication tools, and senior management support. Make sure they feel empowered to make recommendations and implement changes that align with the organization's cultural goals. The key is really key because you don't want them to feel like they're just in another committee meeting where they have no power and they have no say and nothing's going to get done about it. You want to make sure that you prove out, that you show them where the actions are happening, where people are actually paying attention to their recommendations. This will be empowering to them. This will uplift them and it'll keep them in it for the long haul. When I think back at the merger that happened some years ago that put me on the path I'm on now, and there was a merger of 5 companies, and they came together, and when they were coming together, the culture started to go downhill because there was very little listening, not a lot of buy-in, not a lot of understanding and transparency. And I think through how people were feeling, they were feeling scared and not trusting people. They were worried about their jobs, and nobody knew what was going on. And so I went to the head of HR asking her what I should do, and she said, "Yeah, you go for it." And helping people understand their role in all of the change was huge. It was a big thing for them to know what their role was and to also see change inside of their coworkers as they were interacting with them, which they didn't get before because a lot of times they just weren't being listened to. They weren't being validated. They weren't being valued inside of this merger environment. If you are knee deep right now, or you have a hand in, or you're part of culture change is happening, maybe it's reorganizations, mergers, any huge technology changes that are happening, keep in mind that bringing people around the table, listening to them, making them feel heard and seen, when we think about that, that's a big part of keeping people less afraid, less concerned, less freaked out through it. So if they would have done that, if the organization would have looked at the way we do culture teams, looked at how I talk about listening and that framework of active listening, they'd be much better off through the change process. People would be less afraid. People would feel more bought in, and they would feel more empowered to be a part of the change they were seeking as it relates to the change that was taking place. So that is my 2 cents to you. That is my input to you as we think about culture teams. And if you wonder about, what they are and how you do them, giving you this framework, giving you this structure to start going down that road to create a culture team, you will not believe the positive results it brings and how employees feel bought in and how those who aren't on the team still see that there are people advocating for them that are in their same level in the organization. It really does give this sense of togetherness, connectedness, the sense that the organization is up to big and better things and that they have a hand in it. I hope that you have gotten a lot from this episode. Don't forget to share it far and wide so that other people can learn this knowledge to help their culture grow, to help their leadership grow, to increase their engagement, their buy-in, their loyalty, and of course, all the other things that come around that, right? When we look at the bottom line and profitability, it all stems from this. People want to stay with you, with your organization, because you uplift them. You make them feel good about the work they're doing. They feel like it's valued work, like it's meaningful work when you put in the effort to show up with more care, both in yourself and as an organization. Thank you so much for listening to Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.